welcome back to my channel. Today's missing person case is on Roy Frisch. This might be the oldest case I ever do, and you know, I just was super fascinated with it. It was about, you know, it was in a book I was reading, and I just became totally like involved in the case. Literally read dozens of articles on him. And even though they all said like literally the same thing, I was just so into it. But I don't want to have super long intros, you know, I just kind of want to get into it for you guys. Keep the videos short, keep them sweet. So let's go ahead and get into the story of Roy Frisch. It was March 22nd, 1934 when Roy Frisch went missing. Now, I don't expect, obviously, anyone to have any more to give, or, you know, for him to be found alive. He would be like over 130 years old at this point, and it's just, that's how it goes, and this is just one of the biggest mysteries for Reno, Nevada. Roy was a head cashier at the Riverside Bank, which no longer exists, but he would be like a bank manager today, and he was also a Reno city councilman. He lived with his widowed mother and two sisters on the corner of Court and Arlington Street at 247 Court Street. The night he went missing, his mother was throwing a bridge party with her friends, and he didn't want to be in the house for that. He was in his 40s, and so he wanted to get out for a while, and he ended up seeing the movie Gallant Lady at the Majestic Theater, which was off of 1st and Center Street. He just walked to the theater. It's only a few blocks, and he kind of probably just wanted to get out and about, you know, nothing weird really, it's not that far. But the next day, Frisch was supposed to fly to New York to testify against a federal fraud case that had already led to 4 convictions and was subpoenaed to go against his former employers, J. Graham and James C. McKay. Now, just a little backstory of what they were in trouble for and what they were doing. It was one of the Wingfield banks. So the bank was pretty much a hideout for Eastern gangsters who needed to chill, and the bankers would, you know, loan them money, and it was fraud. But Graham and McKay controlled the city council and had friends in every city office, and everybody was just kind of okay with keeping Reno crooked. They'd been using Riverside Bank specifically as a bunko store where conmen all over the country steered their marks. They escorted right in, and they sat down with Jim McKay and reviewed documents and signed papers and got money. Roy handled the paperwork, which is what made him want to be, not made him want to be, but made him a prime witness in the case, because he didn't really know what was going on until it was like too late, and then when he did know, he didn't ever get in trouble for it because he didn't know, and he just needed to testify against them. Ma Barker was a customer, and Babyface Nelson visited to Reno from time to time when he wanted to lower his profile, and they would go and interact with this bank and with Graham and McKay, because they were all friends. So Roy left the movie at about 10 p.m. as confirmed by an usher there who remembered him being like really into the movie. He met up with a friend, and they walked down Virginia Street, and at Court Street they parted ways, and Roy was never seen again. His mother the next morning saw his bed had been untouched, and she called his office and friends before she contacted the police, but ended up having to call the police. The investigation led to a nationwide manhunt because he was such a prime witness. You know, he had first-hand account, like, you know, eyewitness account of the things that were going on, so it was like he could totally, he was going to put them away. And so, you know, him missing days before this big trial, like, that was not okay, so they were looking for him all over the nation. There was a $1,000 reward for any information on the case, and it's important to remember the time because that would be like 20 grand today, which is quite a bit of money. Because of the information that Frisch had, he was a threat to a lot of people in the Reno area. Like, Reno used to be really crooked. Like, mobsters and gangsters and stuff like that came through here all the time. At this time, the mob had At this time, the mob mentality was huge, and the mob mentality actually stayed in Reno until the 90s. I don't know if you guys know that. It probably still has a little bit going on today, but it was like a big thing up until the 90s. So there's really not a lot of information on the case besides that. You know, he went to the theater and he was supposed to be a witness for this case and disappeared. But there are some theories and reasons for the theories, and we're about to get into that. So the biggest theory is Babyface Nelson, which was a famous mob bank robber, and John P. Chase and Ma Barker were in town the night Frisch went missing, and were friends with the people Roy was supposed to be testifying against in just a couple of days. Kay and Graham. Eventually Chase ended up in Alcatraz after like this big blowout where Babyface Nelson died, and when he was in Alcatraz he told an investigator that him and Nelson had watched Frisch leave the theater, and then when he was alone they blocked his path and they were driving a black Buick and threw him in the back and drove off with him. He said that they drove out to the Yerington Desert, which is about an hour and a half to 2 hours from here, probably more like 2 in that day. They weren't going to be going as fast as we do today, and buried him in the desert. Chase was given the opportunity to go and show the authorities where he was buried. You know, his family just wanted to bring his body home, but conveniently when he got there he had no idea where the body was, which then ended that investigation, and they kind of figured he just wanted to get out of jail for a little bit and, you know, come out here, which is just crazy. Now, there's one other theory, but I've only seen it on one website, so I don't know the truth it has. The author claims it was an exclusive, that someone was like, you look like a writer, let me tell you this, I know what happened to Roy Frisch, and he said it was a couple decades after it happened that this man approached him about it, which it seems kind of weird, but I guess the man said that he didn't want to come forward any earlier because he didn't want to get involved in something like that, and him and his wife decided that it just wasn't a good idea to get involved. But here's the story. I'm going to go ahead and read it verbatim because it's like kind of complicated and I just don't want to mess anything up, so I'm going to go ahead and be like looking down, and yeah, that's what's happening. So it says, I think I can tell you what happened to Roy Frisch, he said, and when I assured him I was interested in hearing more, he went on. In that spring of 1934, my partner and I were leasing the Fairview mine from George Wingfield. Again, Wingfield Banks, so it's kind of weird, right? And we had closed down production to do some maintenance work. We were working adrift near the bottom of the main shaft, and water was collecting in the sump pump faster than we could dump it out. On the morning after he disappeared, I was in Fallon picking up groceries and supplies. My partner was in the machine shop out of sight of the shaft and of the hoist house, working on the new pump we were going to install. His wife was in the kitchen making lunch and saw a big black car coming up the road and past the house. There were 3 men in it. She saw them clearly as the car drove past, the driver and 2 men in the back seat. So that could have been Chase driving and then Nelson and Roy in the back seat. A few minutes later, she saw the car drive out again with 2 men in the front seat. She took it that a visitor had been left at the machine shop because if they had just dropped somebody off. When her husband came in for lunch, she asked him where his visitor was, and he asked what visitor. He hadn't seen a car, hadn't had any visitors. When they went outside, they could see a fresh tire track in the snow, and it went like to the mine shaft and then made a big loop back to the entrance. They told me about it when I came home back from Fallon, but we decided the 3rd man must have been in the car after all and didn't think any more about it. We installed the new pump and it was a big improvement, so we went to work drilling and blasting, just the 2 of us, one in the drift down below, one working at the hoist at the surface. But after a few weeks, the pump started to act up. It had a gasoline engine and it pumped the mine water through the cooling jacket, but the filter kept clogging up with some kind of gummy fibrous material. It would start all right and run fine for a while, and then the filter would clog again and it would heat up, and I'd have to take it apart and clean it of this stuff I'd never seen in a mine before. Now these were miners. They'd been doing this a long time and been to a lot of mines, so it's kind of weird that it was like something they'd never seen before. Over the course of a few days, the clogging decreased and finally stopped completely, but I was curious about the stuff and I set some aside. I thought maybe we'd run into more of it. At that time there was a doctor in Fallon who had come out from New York for a Reno divorce. Divorce in Reno was a huge thing because it was like one of the only places back in this time where you could come and get a quick divorce. like lots of movie stars and, you know, people all over the country came here to do it and would like throw their wedding rings off of the Virginia Street Bridge. Sorry, that was just a little intervention. Liked it here and set up a practice. He had also built a fairly sophisticated lab, and so I took the stuff to him. He didn't have any idea what it was, just a wad of brown stuff, but he agreed to look into it. When I stopped by the next week, I asked him if he was able to identify the stuff. Yes, he said, it's human hair, brown hair from a white male in young middle age. Now that is creepy and means that if this is true, then they drove out to the shaft and just threw him down it. But I don't know why they threw him down an active shaft, but then it kind of makes sense because it was Wingfield's shaft, and Wingfield also owned the bank, and so it was like he was also, you know, in with all like the like gangsters and stuff coming into his banks and doing that. So I think that's really, really weird. And then yeah, if it was hair, why would there be hair down there? But I don't know. Again, it was only from this one guy. I don't see any accounts from the doctor or anything like that. It was so long ago. The internet wasn't a thing. These kinds of things get lost, and that really sucks. Okay, now that's all the theories there really is. I've read that to this day the light at the Frisch house is left on overnight in remembrance of Roy, and I kind of want to drive by and see if that's true, but I also don't really want to walk out to my car because it's scary. So what do you guys think happened to Roy? He was declared dead in 1941, but like I've said, the body or killers were never found. I think if Nelson would have never died, that they would have had more answers for sure. Do you think the body was in the mine shaft or in the desert or somewhere else completely? What do you think was in the mine shaft? Was it somebody else's body, you think? And do you believe these gangsters were involved, or that he just met a random unfortunate fate? Thank you guys so much for watching. I'm so excited to see what you guys have to say in the comments down below, and let's have a good discussion about this, and have a good one. Make sure you guys subscribe and like the video.